So last week, my homie EverythingOShauN dropped a brand new song called Wylin featuring Kayo, and it was produced by myself and my bro Xpress. Now, something I never do in my YouTube is break down some of the songs and beats that I've contributed to, and I wanted to do that in today's video. I wanted to go behind the scenes and show you how I put this together, of course with my man XP. Now, if you're someone who likes to see what goes on behind the scenes, who likes to know what went into every single song and get some more stories from the background, you're going to love this video because I'm going to do all that and a whole lot more. Are you ready? Let's go. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy 5-piece producer and engineer extraordinaire. Thank you for checking out today's video, and if you haven't already, please hit the bell and subscribe button down below so you can stay tuned for more helpful content. I drop something new every single week, always focused on helping you sound better and helping you make more money with your music. If you want help with these two areas, definitely subscribe to the channel so I can help you with that. But in today's video, we're talking all about Wylin, this brand new song that just came out. It's been getting a great reaction, and it's definitely a different vibe from today's current hip-hop climate. We're getting a lot of trap records and, you know, these more harder kinds of sounding records, and I would say that this record is very different. It doesn't sound like them, but it's still hard hitting and still has the dynamics that you want to hear in a hip-hop track. So I got the session open here, and I wanted to just kind of break down certain things and of course answer a couple of questions that people have been asking me as it relates to the process. Now, the cool thing about this session was that it actually started as me not producing. So it started with XP, Oshauwn, and Kayo. They already had the song together. And typically what happens is they come to me for mixing and mastering. So usually XP, I would say he produces like 90 to 95% of EverythingOShauN's music. And for good reason. He is his blood brother. So they're always together and they're always able to quickly make tracks with, you know, no difficulty, especially now in a lockdown, quarantine kind of situation. That being said, they usually come to me after the fact to do the post-production to help them just polish everything and make it sound really tight, punchy, and full, and I do that all the time. Me, I never really focus on trying to contribute to a beat unless it feels like I absolutely need to, and this situation was one of those where they sent me this record and it was cool. It was definitely like, you know, had the foundation laid out, but I just felt like the drums and the bass and the low end overall was lacking, and it wasn't something that could be fixed in the mixing side of things. This was a production problem that needed to be addressed, and I just told them straight up, hey, send me the stems, let me mess with it. If it works out, cool, we can use the beat that I made, obviously as a collab. If it doesn't, then whatever. At least I just tried to fix a couple of the problems, and, you know, here we are, right? Now, what ended up happening was I ended up going in and adding a whole bunch of stuff. So I wanted to kind of break down what XP did initially, and then I want to go into my contribution so that you could kind of see how, you know, without XP's contributions, nothing that I would have done would have mattered, you know what I mean? So here's the session here, and XP, he did provide a lot of stuff, and I would say he primarily provided the music, the actual instrumental music. So I'll just play a little bit of a loop here of the instruments. I'm just going to solo it. So there's a few elements playing there. You got the piano. Right? You got a reverse piano. Very subtle. We got this old TV sample is sort of how XP labeled it. So it's got like a little bit of a Vox kind of thing, you know what I mean? We got another one of those. Sounds like it's filtered out. And then we got a Vox sample. Very subtle. I don't even think you could really hear that in the final track, but anyways. And then this was cool. We got some nature valley is what it's labeled as, some nature effects. Just sounds like the wilderness, you know? So XP initially provided these sounds, and he did provide a couple of percussion sounds that I ended up using. One being this was his original snare, which I still kept in, but I layered underneath my own. But check this out. You know, pretty whippy, right? This percussion kind of loop thing. Hopefully you can hear that. I'm going to turn it up a little bit so you can hear it. Super subtle, right? But just a nice little texture. And then he had a little bit of a reverb. I think that was a part of that percussion I just played. So obviously adding a little bit more of a rhythm. And then he had a hi-hat. And he gave me two of them. One was a little bit different for the intro. Slightly different pitch, right? So as you can see, he gave me a lot of the track, a lot of the main things that, you know, make up this song. But again, my issue was with the low end and the drums. I just felt like they were not hitting. The kick selection wasn't there. And it's not to discredit XP. He's a fucking amazing producer. You know what I mean? But even myself, sometimes I make beats and I listen back to the sound choices I made and I'm like, oh, this isn't it. And I have to go in and replace sounds, or sometimes this happens later in the mixing process. So the lesson here is obviously just make sure you're picking some really, really high quality sounds and not just putting placeholders in there, you know? So ultimately what I wanted to do on this track was I wanted to give it some more groove. And I felt that XP, I don't have his original sounds here that I got rid of, but he had like an 808 in there and it was very like muddy and it was sustained for the most part. And I think it was actually not even in key at a few different points, which we tried to fix, but we just couldn't figure that out. So I ultimately decided to replace the 808 with, I would say, what is one of the driving factors of the record, which is my 808. And I'm going to play this, you know, a couple of different sections for you. So check this out. This was the hook, I believe. So you can tell it's very sustained. It's happening and it's staying the entire time. But what ultimately happens is I don't have it like that for the entire track. I have the 808 drop out at different times. And I also have it come back but play more of a staccato kind of rhythm where it's just happening quickly. It's like boom, 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 boom. And then it's out. You know what I mean? So check this out. This is what I'm talking about. Right? So, you know, when I'm soloing it, you may not fully feel it, but it's allowing space between each note, and that space allows you to create dynamics because it's going from really loud to quiet, or, you know, silent in this case, and then coming back in again. And that's what gives it the bounce, because I feel like, again, the bounce was something that needed some work on the initial production. So you see how I kind of have it be staccato at times, and then I have it be sustained at times, back to staccato, sustained, and I'm kind of doing this push-pull back and forth, in addition to adding some other stuff, adding some pitch bends and other, you know, creative flair stuff that'll just, you know, help make it more interesting, right? So that was the 808, and then I also ended up adding a couple of drum sounds. So if I just want to play for a moment the drums, I could just show you some of the stuff I put in here. So the first thing that you may notice is the kick, right? It's a pretty deep, full, kind of punchy kick. And it very much follows the 808 pattern, right? So if I play the kick and the 808, you'll see. And it's not perfect. It's not happening every single time they hit. They don't hit at the same exact time, but they do happen to, you know, occur more often than not together, right? And I like that. It just helps with the bounce. Now, you may have also noticed I added a snare, and this snare is significantly, you know, whippier and harder in a way than the original one that was there. So check this out. Right? Kind of cool. Definitely sounds like a drum machine. Doesn't sound organic by any means. And And that was kind of it for the drums that I added, except I did add some more percussion, metallic percussion, primarily this reverse open hi-hat. Right? And it'll make more sense in the context of the track. For example, what I feel like this is doing is it's helping you build up into the snare. So it's like snap, snap, right? And that's just creating that impact once again that I really wanted to have, the dynamics. And the other thing I added was another offbeat kind of hi-hat, just to accent the rhythm. Very subtle. It's just happening every so often. And then another hi-hat that I added, which is a bit more consistent. Pretty simple stuff, right? So it might make more sense if I just played the drums without my contributions for a quick moment, and then I'll put them in and show you exactly how it affected, you know, the end result. So let me just play this section here. You get the idea. I'm pretty sure it's pretty straightforward, but just adding a lot of rhythmic elements, bass, drums, hi-hats, and you know, when I put them in, it just adds to that feeling. It adds to that groove and that rhythm that actually makes you want to move with the track. The other thing I should probably mention is we do have a series of drops, as you can tell. I can't fully take credit for these. I'm not even sure if I made some of these or if some of these were XP. I'm sure it was probably a combination of both, but we tend to just drop out the music. And of course we did this with the acapella, so we knew what the vocal was doing, and then we're ultimately dropping parts out just so that it obviously hits and impacts a bit better and adds emphasis to certain lines, etc. So I wanted to answer some questions that a few people have been asking me. I thought they were really great questions, and I just wanted to break some things down, give you a little bit more insight into this record. As you can tell, I sort of stepped into it after the fact, after it was essentially quote-unquote done, but ultimately re-engineered it in a way, added a lot more stuff to beef it up and make it more impactful. Now, one good question somebody asked me was, what was the inspiration behind the track? And for me, when I first heard the song, it reminded me of Outkast, believe it or not. So like there's that whole hook part, and XP actually comes in with his vocal, and it's kind of like a crowd vocal. It just reminded me of old school Outkast. I don't know why. Maybe that's not accurate, but that's just what it reminded me of personally. And I love how the track, it felt sort of like ignorant, but then it also was very uplifting and motivational and trying to like encourage people to like, you know, while out, right? That's why we're wilding, right? Because we're celebrating life, we're having a good time, etc., right? So I like the vibe of that, and that was really, you know, the inspiration, I suppose. I'm obviously coming into something after the fact. I didn't decide to do this myself, but I knew that I had to enhance what was already there in the best way that I knew how, which is, you know, through some crazy drum programming with hard-hitting banging drums and big 808s. I feel like that's a real crazy signature that's on a lot of my tracks. And I try to do it in a way that's not like every other producer, because there is sort of this stereotypical hard drum and 808 sound. Trying to figure out how to do it in a way that's a bit more musical or different can be challenging, but I feel like it's something that I've gotten better at over the years. Now, another question that somebody asked me was, what vibe were you going for on this track? And again, I'm coming into this track after the fact, so I felt like the vibe was sort of already established in a way, but I feel like it wasn't executed as perfectly as it could have been, and that's where I wanted to just sort of step in and, you know, make that happen, right? Bridge that gap. And for me, the song was very like uplifting, but then it needed to be harder hitting, and it wasn't hitting as hard as I wanted it to. And that was because it really wasn't dynamic. You know, the track itself wasn't dynamic, and I wanted my version to feel very dynamic. So that's why I focused on replacing, you know, XP's original 808, which was pretty much consistently sustained throughout. I decided, okay, let's put in some staccato parts where it's quick and sporadic, and then it disappears. Let's get rid of it. Let's not have it happen all the time, so that way you can appreciate it when it comes in. right? Same thing with the drums. I just knew that the drums needed more hit. I mean, the essential bare bones skeleton was there, but it just needed a little bit more impact or emphasis, and that's obviously what I was focused on. Another cool question somebody asked me was, how did I know that the beat was going to complement the vocals? And I honestly, sometimes you don't know this, but I just knew that I had to keep it simple and play with the variables that I was given. And I felt like I was already given, like, you know, more than half of the beat. It was already mostly there. Of course, what I ended up doing, I feel like really bridged that gap and made it as hard hitting and made it what we wanted it to be. But OShauN was saying that when he sent the beat to Kayo, or sent the track to Kayo, Kayo said like, yo, this is a completely different song, you know, from what they initially had conceived. And that is what I was going for. I was trying to figure out how could I take something that we're sort of used to and then make it something new, but without straying too far from our initial idea, because I feel like it was already half-baked. It was already almost there. Someone asked me, what is my favorite part of the song? And my favorite part is the verse, which has the 808 breakdown where OShauN says, I do whatever I want.
I do whatever I want. Life is a jungle, we hungry, we hunt. A lot of you niggas, you capping, you frontin', you bitchin', it must be your time of the month.
And I love it because of just the starting and the stopping of the track. You know how it just kind of stutters in and out, and it gives a really cool feeling and bounce that I feel like isn't there throughout the entire song. It really only happens in this section and maybe a few other sections similar to it in the verses. Somebody wanted to know, what was the biggest challenge with this song? And I would say the biggest challenge was not overdoing it. This goes back to my previous point about how I wanted to keep things simple and how I just didn't want to have an ego about it, where I was trying to really go in and add every possible thing I could, or, you know, have such a big say in the record. I really felt like it was already very close. It just needed this, you know, additional finesse and fine tuning to make it impact, to make it hit the way that we wanted it to. So the challenge was definitely not overdoing it. It's very easy to overdo production. It's very difficult to keep things simple and to restrain yourself or prevent yourself from doing way too much. And I guess the final question here is, who's going to love this song? I personally think that if you're a fan of more boom bap or organic sort of hip hop, you're gonna like this. So if you're a fan of like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar, I know they don't perfectly fit into that criteria, but I feel like if you like those artists and their music, you're gonna like this song because it's very current. It has very current sounding drums and production, for example, but then it also has this sort of nostalgic, reminiscent, feel-good vibe, you know? And of course, it's an uplifting song, no matter what the lyrics say and what you may interpret them as. The song is meant to motivate people and just encourage them to celebrate and wild out when you're doing a good job, or when you're, you know, making the strides that you want to make in life. I feel like we're doing that now, and I'm so appreciative and grateful to be a part of this song in the process. So let me know what you think. Do you like how I broke this track down? Do you want to see more? Let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please hit the bell and subscribe button. Smash that thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm to see more of my content, and I'm excited to drop some more stuff for y'all soon. Y'all take care now. Peace.
5.